What's going on, guys? What's going on, girls? Sal here, back again. Gonna break down this Thursday night slate, and it's Thursday, so we got a lot of information. The reason I'm not doing this on Tuesday like I usually do, I'm doing it on Thursday. I mentioned in my last video I had to leave town for a few days at college, and I had to go take care of some family things. Unfortunately, passing in the family, a cousin of a younger age, so very sad. I'm actually going to leave in the description below, no pressure at all for anybody in here. I'm just going to leave like a GoFundMe that my family started just for, he had 2 young daughters, so I'm going to leave that below. That's all I'll talk about for that. If you feel the need to go ahead and donate, that'd be great. If not, no pressure at all. But basically, we have this Thursday night slate tonight. It's going to be a short video, or a shorter lifespan video, right? Because in basically a few hours, once I post this, the game starts, and then nobody cares about Thursday Night Football 2011 week 11, 2008, or 2018. So basically, nobody's going to care at that point. Sorry, it's 7 a.m. Didn't even put my contacts in. I just want to get all these videos out today for you guys. So I appreciate if you could hit that like button since it won't be up there for too long. Comment anything that you want to comment, any questions you have for tonight's game, any strategies that you're thinking, and we'll break that into this. If you haven't subscribed already, I appreciate that as well. So a lot of things to go on tonight. I'm a Packers fan, so I love this game already because it's Thursday night. My team's playing. But a lot of things to go into. They're kind of rivals at this point, or at least they were a few years back. I mean, you know, you have the Fail Mary in this exact location with the exact referee officiating this game. So that's definitely interesting. You have Brandon Bostic dropping the ball in Seattle. So the Packers have a lot of bad history in Seattle. Wouldn't be surprised if some calls don't go their way tonight. That's just the way that they have luck there in Seattle. But they've won the last, I think, 2 or 3 matchups since that 2000 and that 2000 whatever it was, like 13, 14, whatever game. I think it was 13. I just don't even want to think about that Brandon Bostic game. Another couple other things. We have the 2 highest passer raters in NFL history on this slate. We have Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson. This is my first time looking at it as well, and it's Thursday, so it's a pretty late look, but I think we can manage. And we have the 2 quarterbacks at the highest price, 2 highest rating passers in NFL history. Aaron Rodgers 1, Russell Wilson number 2. So it's definitely interesting on this slate. I didn't think we would see Russell Wilson this high. I thought maybe we would see more so of a Davante Adams up there, even Aaron Jones, who's coming out. I think he'll probably be the most popular captain due to saving of his price at least $4,000 based on the top 3 guys. It's not closer to $6,000 if you're going up to Aaron Rodgers. In this game, it's going to be interesting to see what we see, though, because we do have the 2 highest pass raters in NFL history. But on one side of the ball, we have Russell Wilson, who's not throwing the ball at all, as you can see right here. Russell Wilson literally not throwing the ball at all. 39 times against the Chargers, the most that I think he's thrown all year by far. Yeah, so he's averaging like mid-20s pass attempts a game. Like, look at this, 21 attempts, 23, 17, 26. So it's definitely alarming to have as a starter quarterback. And, I mean, his line's gotten a little bit better as they've been able to run the ball. They lead the league in rushing yards per game at 152. And the Packers lead the league in yards per attempt at 5.2. That has to do a lot with Aaron Jones, who is in NFL history lead with like 6.12 yards per attempt, which is nuts. Finally unleashed him last week. I expect him to get a lot of the carries tonight. So you have these 2 higher rated passers squaring off against each other, right? Short week, advantage Seattle. Packers secondary is good. It's a lot better. They're probably a top 10 overall defense, but against the defending receivers on the outside, they still are shaky. Advantage of Tyler Lockett, advantage of Russell Wilson. Aaron Rodgers is who he is. Davante Adams is going to be king. It's better that we're doing this on a Thursday, maybe because now we know these injury news a lot better. Chris Carson off the injury report, he's a FOCO. Randall Cobb not playing. We didn't know these things on Monday or Tuesday when I would have made the video. Randall Cobb not playing, so that clears up MVS. That gives Jimmy Graham a boost. That gives Davante Adams even a boost. He's still going to see his main targets, but without Cobb there in the slot, maybe vulturing a touchdown away or 2 in the red zone. Cobb does have good red zone usage. Davante Adams leads the league in he's second in wide receiver red zone usage. I think he's second maybe in overall usage. I think it's like 43% of the team's red zone share goes to Davante Adams. It's absolutely nuts. So there's a lot of things going on in this game. There's a lot of ways for points to be scored in this game. Now let's just break down this slate, right? So like I said, highest priced guys are these receivers. Davante Adams is somebody who's just been literally consistent as it goes for now. This is 3 years. I believe he now regained the lead over DeAndre Hopkins for most touchdowns since the start of the 2016 season. I know he finished last season with the most touchdowns in the past 2 years. I think Hopkins passed him up this year, but he had 3 touchdowns in the past 2 weeks, 2 this past week. I think that ended up going above Hopkins, what he's been doing. I think due to the bye for Hopkins. So as you can see right here, right? I mean, this is like a floor game for Davante. Would be a 7-target game. In a game where they're leading, they won by 3 scores. So there's really not much pressure to pass. And even in that game, he gets you 57 yards and 2 touchdowns. Even if he doesn't get you 57 yards, he's having 4 receptions for about 60 yards. His floor is probably around 10 points. But the guy is going to have so much targets, as you can see here. Look at these targets. And these targets right here, 14, 12, 16, that's with Cobb out of the lineup and Allison out of the lineup. This week right here, Allison was back, Cobb was back. This week right here, New England, I think Allison was out, Cobb was in against Miami. A little bit limited of snaps, but these 3 guys were here. Now, Cobb wasn't taking away a big target share, and we can look at that right now. Not taking away a big target share at all, but it's notable that in the 3 games with those 2 guys out, he had double-digit targets, 12, 16, whatever it was. And yeah, I mean, look, 6, 5 in those games. Cobb was actually out this past week, I believe. Yeah, so Cobb was out this past weekend. So he had 6. Let's go back to Adams. Adams had, with Cobb, and he had 14, 12, 16, and 7. I mean, we could add that right up right here, 39 targets. So he's averaging about 10 targets a game, just under. It's like 9.8 targets, 9.7 targets per game with Cobb and Allison out of the lineup. That's pretty damn good. We already know he's pretty damn good. He's captain viable for sure. But can we get a price savings? Aaron Jones finally unleashed this week. Interesting to see him maybe not higher than like a Russell Wilson, whose ceiling is just capped. He did start rushing the ball this past week a little bit more than he has all year against the Rams, so maybe that's something they're going to take out the second half of the year as teams aren't prepared for it as much. But Aaron Jones just went absolutely bananas against Miami. He didn't even play like the final 2 drives, and he still put up these numbers on literally 15 carries. Like, the man doesn't get more than 15 touches. That was I think that was his career high, 15 touches right there, and season high, as you can see, and averaging almost 10 yards a carry. Yes, he had a 60-yard run, but the man's averaging 6.12 yards a carry in his career. Absolutely ridiculous, leads the NFL in history. So I like Aaron Jones in the captain spot. My only worry is that, yes, he just went off a ton. So a lot of people that barely play or don't study it as much as you, me, whoever's like looking into this video, making the video, they're going to see this 35 points. They're going to hear all the hype that Aaron Jones has had. They're going to know the Packers. Maybe they're going to know the Packers average 5.2 yards a carry, but that's mainly because of him. I mean, look at he's literally averaging that every single game. It's nuts. And Aaron Rodgers runs. Jamal Williams is pretty much Bunn's elusive rating is, I think, second last in the league when Aaron Jones is first in the league. So it's absolutely insane that he's above Alvin Kamara now in elusive rating. So Aaron Jones, I love putting in the captain spot in cash. I think that's a very safe play. He's a guy, if he gets 20 touches, is going to have over 100 yards. Just no doubt about it because this guy's so good. But you would have to say on a short week, he just ran for so much. Is there any fatigue going into that on the road? I know that road teams just in general haven't been favored well at all, their team success. I think the Packers are equipped to handle that a little bit better, but again, they're traveling on a short week to Seattle, basically across the country from Green Bay, a little bit closer than like East Coast, but still. So I don't know, in tournaments, there's going to be a lot of Aaron Jones in that captain spot, and I know that you guys watching this are going to want to be probably already have lineups with Aaron Jones in the captain spot, and that's fine because he's very viable to go for 30 yards. He's very viable, or 30 points. He's very viable to even get 20 points, and that's still fine for you. It's not going to kill you with a 30-point captain at all, especially if you're able to then fit 1 or even 2 of these guys up here. I think Russell Wilson's the odd man out when we just look at the top 4. I think nobody's really going to want to play him because they're going to see this, right? They're going to see, sure, he can get you 20 points, but why am I paying up that high for a guy who can get me 20 points when I can pay up for a guy in Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones, who can get me a ceiling of like a captain game, a ceiling of like a 40-point game if they go for 25 to 30 points, right? Then you have Tyler Lockett, who the man just continues to score touchdowns. It's absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, his touchdown regression hasn't hit him yet. He's already at 7 touchdowns this year. For a guy who usually only catches deep bombs, he's catching some around the red zone now. So I like Tyler Lockett here. It's interesting to see who's going to be the matchup. Jair Alexander is in a shadow corner. He's not a guy who just stays on the outside. He comes into the slot. He came into the slot against Danny Amendola last week. So I could see him going into the slot, whether it's against Doug Baldwin. He could stay on the outside against Moore and Lockett. So there's really no way of telling where Jair is going to go. He's a great cornerback. They also have other good cornerbacks. Breland, who got the benefit of the doubt, and the Packers actually brought him in for a tryout. Everybody said he looked bad. He looked bad his first week. He looked pretty good last week. And then they have Josh Jackson. They have some other guys there. Kevin King's not going to play for Green Bay. There's a lot of defensive injuries. KJ Wright probably not going to play for Seattle. Blake Martinez is questionable for the Packers. It's a linebacker, so that helps with Chris Carson of the world. Very good tackling linebacker. Led the league in tackles last year. Tied for the league in tackles, which is very weird. Blake Martinez did last year. So it's definitely some big defensive injuries that it will impact the game to keep an eye on. Then you have MVS, who I think is going to be another very popular captain spot, and I think that he could be viable this week because, look at this, still had 7 targets, still got the targets, right? He's a number 2 receiver out there without Cobb, without Allison. Still had good amount of receptions, 44 yards isn't going to kill you, especially when his price was $5K last week. He gets you 10.4 points, right? He doesn't meet value at that point. You would like to get like another 5 points out of him to 3x his salary, basically. But I mean, if he's getting a long of 11 and he still had 6 catches on 7 targets, the guys, look at these longs, right? This is the first game that he played against Buffalo. 38, 14, 60, 40, 51, and 11. That's definitely the outlier, right? It's probably going to be more around that 40 range is where he's going to have his long catches in the game. The secondary of the Seahawks isn't that great, especially when you have a guy like Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball. MVS has been burning cornerbacks. Rodgers has been kind of off this season, missing some of them. Leads the league in throwaways, going to crush the NFL record in throwaways. Part of that is because just nobody gets open. Part of that's because he doesn't hit his first or second read right away. I don't know what's going on there. I like MVS as a captain because people are going to see that this is pretty mediocre points for a captain. They're going to see this and say, oh, we want a guy who's going to score 30. When MVS can score 30, right? He had 20, 16, and almost 16 and 12 and a half with those guys out of the lineup, and he's built a rapport with Rodgers in the few weeks since then, including in the bye week. There's a lot of positive news coming out from MVS. Doug Baldwin's definitely. He's definitely interesting to me as well because he's a guy who should be getting closer to 100 yards and a touchdown almost every game if they threw the ball more, right? I think this is a game where you're going to have to predict game flow, right? Everybody's going to think based on the stats that people are saying. Seahawks lead the league in rushing. Chris Carson's back. Aaron Jones is a beast now. The Packers need to rely on him more. The Packers are averaging like 7 yards a carry. Or Aaron Jones is averaging like something nuts, like 8 or 9 yards a carry on 1st and 10. So this could be a game where they literally just lean on it. And I think a lot of people are expecting both teams to lean on the run. The Seahawks have done that all year except when they play the Rams because anybody can't lean on the run against the Rams. You have to throw the ball. And the Packers haven't done it as much, and they finally did it last game, and they beat a team by 3 scores finally, right? So I think that's probably the most realistic game flow, that both teams are going to run the ball, which might take ownership off of a Devontae Adams at that higher price range, might take ownership off of a Rodgers. You might not see a Rodgers, Adams, Aaron Jones stack a lot, that much at all. I think a sneaky play would put all 3 of them not in the captain spot, and then you go up and you put somebody else in the captain spot. If you want to go full package stack, maybe MVS, maybe a guy like Baldwin, who again is similar to MVS in that he hasn't gone off for a 30-point game, hasn't even gone off for a 20-point game, very inconsistent, and that's due to the Seahawks pass catchers. I don't know. I love Doug Baldwin. He's always been undervalued because of his size, because he's not a huge, big, flashy guy, but he always scores touchdowns, right? That's something that's not there this year. The touchdowns aren't there this year, and I don't think he's going to go an entire year. Yes, I know he was injured for like 2 or 3 weeks. I don't think he's going to go an entire year without scoring a touchdown. Is that touchdown going to come this week? That's hard to predict, but the fact that he hasn't scored one in his first, like, what, 7 games, however many games he's played this year, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, yeah, so I don't think it's going to go all year. I just don't know if that's tonight, right? So that's something we have to keep an eye on. Do we want to touch these Seahawks pass catchers when the average times that Russell Wilson's throwing the ball is 25? He's been extremely efficient. He's averaging like 3 touchdowns a week almost, and he's throwing the ball like 25 times a week, so that's extremely efficient. A touchdown every like 8, 9 pass attempts, that's nuts. Even less sometimes. So let's see, Cobb's out. Now you have the range here, so 10-8, and now if we're not looking at flex salary, basically have 3 guys in the double-digit range. So Aaron Jones is somewhat cheap, I would say, at 9,000. Somebody you want to get in your lineups. MVS, I think, is very cheap at 78. I think he should be in the 8,000 range. Baldwin then comes in. Then you have Cobb. So basically 7,200 to a gap of Jimmy Graham. That's a $1,600 gap. That's a huge gap. I think Jimmy Graham's a great play this week. I think putting him in a captain spot is a sneaky play this week with people wanting to throw Aaron Jones in there. People probably going to want to throw Chris Carson if he's somewhere. He's cheap as heck too. They didn't know. Basically, these 3 running backs, they don't know who's going to get the ball, right? They didn't know if Carson was going to be out, so they priced Mike Davis up here, who ended up getting 15 touches. He caught a touchdown again. But Penny got a lot of work this past week, 12 touches for 100 yards. All these running backs can do the job, right? They have 3 valuable running backs back there. With Carson coming back, I think it's Carson's backfield, and as you can see, those 2 running backs were there the previous weeks when Carson literally went for 32, 19, 14, and 25. They like Chris Carson. They like feeding him the rock. He might not be the most efficient back in terms of yards per carry, but he breaks tackles, and with a line that's not that great, he breaks a few tackles. He gets you like 4 yards a clip, and he gets the ball 30 times a game, and he's going to do well, right? He's their goal line back. I think he's going to remain a goal line back, even with those 2 guys there. I think Chris Carson at $5,000 is the play. I'm going to plug him in the captain spot just for now because you know the Seahawks are going to want to run the ball at least, not counting Russell Wilson rushing attempts. Between their running backs, they're going to want to run the ball probably in this game 25 to 30 times. And that's just based off what they've done so far this year. If Chris Carson is back and healthy, which he was off the injury report, so I believe he's fully healthy, if they're going to run the ball 25 to 30 times, I see Carson getting at least 15 of those attempts, right? We saw Penny do good last week. Maybe they want to keep feeding him. But that's the thing with Pete Carroll. He might just put Penny in the lineup, not even run Davis or Carson. It would be very interesting. Penny did great yards per carry last week. Davis is being very efficient, over 5 yards per carry last week. So the Seahawks scheme and the way that they run the ball is great. It's hard to predict who's going to do well. I think Chris Carson, who people who watch the game logs are going to see 4 points. Wow, I like these other 2 running backs. Maybe they don't know, more of the casual player, that, hey, this guy's actually the starter. I think he's a sneaky play to throw into your captain spot because he's so cheap, and it allows you to do this right up here. You want a Devontae Adams, you want an Aaron Jones in this game. You can get them both. You can probably even then get an Aaron Rodgers. But let's say we stay away from the on-the-road quarterback who has been struggling a little bit this year, right? We're not characteristically seeing Aaron Rodgers, who did well for a few weeks, going for under 20 points, closer to like this 18-point range, 15-point range the 1 week in this offense. And yes, Aaron Jones had a lot to do with that in Week 10. Week 9, their offense just basically sputtered after the Aaron Jones fumble. It was doing pretty well. Against the Rams, that was also very interesting to see, but Jones had a long touchdown in that game as well, right? So who are you banking on in this game? I'm banking on the 2 Packer playmakers. The guy that should see in this game with Cobb out, he should see double-digit targets without a doubt in this game. The guy that in Aaron Jones should see 15, and I believe he should see 20-plus touches in the game, and he's getting work in the passing game now since he's been the primary back. The past 2 weeks, he's getting 4 and 5 targets. That's great. And then in a game where they really didn't need him in the passing game, they weren't trailing, which I don't see that happening in this game, but I do see this game staying close. I think they are still underdogs, which is pretty crazy. I would avoid at least Rodgers in this situation, right? And I think a lot of people might actually avoid Rodgers in this situation based on the run attack. But if you're entering multiple lineups, do one saying that it's going to be a run-heavy game script, and that's where you get the 2 running backs, and then run it back with whoever else you want. Do one where you're like, okay, the running backs aren't going to get anything because the defense is going to be preparing for that. I think Blake Martinez and KJ Wright, both of those players are huge guys if they're out. If they're both in, I think it's very viable to not go running back game script, right? I think both running backs, in terms of Jones and whichever Seattle running back goes off, it's basically spinning the wheel. I think it'll be Carson. You can put multiple in there too because we just saw they split a lot of carries. But with Carson starting, it seemed like that he was getting the majority of the work when he was in there. So I think that if Blake Martinez is in, KJ Wright's in, and that's important to look at, both for if you're playing a defense, but also if you're playing these running backs. It takes a little hit off of them, right? If Blake Martinez led the league in tackles is in, it takes a little bit off of Carson. I don't think a lot, but it's a playmaker that's in there. You're going to put a linebacker in who's not nearly as good on both sides of the ball. So we want some exposure now to the Seattle passing game, or do we, right? That's like the real question. We know Seattle will just drop back and throw a bomb. Do we think Tyler Lockett keeps up this touchdown streak? Do we think he keeps this up on literally limited targets, right? He's been doing all of his work. He caught 4 balls here on 6 targets, 5 balls, 6 targets. I mean, 6 targets isn't terrible, but do I want to pay $8K for a guy who might not see 5 targets in the game, especially if the running game is successful? MVS is more the player that I want to see, but 2 pass catchers in a game that we're going to go run heavy game script. Don't know if I love that either. I kind of like the kickers in this game. We saw both kickers take home the last slate on Monday night. MVS I like because the man can catch you a 50-yard touchdown. He meets value right there, or basically meets value right there. So now we have a lot of money left over, right? We could literally go Aaron Rodgers if we wanted, and you can punt. So we haven't even looked at these punts down here yet. It seems like Seattle's tight ends are always a decent option because one of them is going to catch a touchdown. Just which one is it? Literally nothing down here. Mercedes Lewis finally had, I think, his second catch of the year. And went for a pretty long gain. He basically snuck out, and nobody was like, you're going to throw the ball to Mercedes Lewis. We don't believe that. They did. It worked out a little bit. CJ Prosise has been a healthy scratch for a while now. Lance Kendricks, a guy who will see 2 targets in a game. Right here, so 2 targets for 4 points. So at this price, we just miss him. I wouldn't mind throwing Lance Kendricks in there if you want to go full Packers stack because he's basically a punt, right? And in that spot right here, Lance Kendricks has to catch you 2 balls. I believe Lance Kendricks does have a touchdown on the season. Yeah, he has 1 touchdown on the season. If he does something like that and gets you 8 points, look at this, 8, 5 points, and 4 points. Yes, he's going to very viable to the goose egg, but if he gets you 1 or 2 catches at 1,100 and allows you to fit this lineup in, it's 100% worth it, right? We saw a guy who had Samuel. We saw a guy who had Samuel, and then somebody had Schultz, who won on the Cowboys slate against the Eagles. He had Schultz, who I think had like 2 catches for like 10 yards, and he won it because he got those extra 3 points from a guy like that. Was able to fit in Zeke, was able to fit in, and Ertz in those captain spots. Coming up, there's really not much that I like. Ed Dixon, I kind of like. 1,600, he's dirt cheap, right? Caught a touchdown 2 weeks ago. He's a big body receiver. If Blake Martinez is out, that's a huge advantage for the Seahawks and their tight ends. Now look, Vedette's the guy, right? He's the guy. He's also dirt cheap. He's the guy that you want in this offense. The Chargers don't defend the tight end well without Joey Bosa. The Packers are similar to that if they don't have Blake Martinez. I think that could be a decent matchup for them. I think Vanette is dirt cheap. I think a lot of people are going to play him because they're going to see these stats, right? If $1,800, even if he gets you 3 points, it doesn't absolutely kill you. And it seems like his upside is closer to the 5-point range based on his average of like, what, 5.6, 6.3, yeah. So I don't hate Vanette if we can get to him. That's something that you could play if you go off of Rodgers here. You go Vanette. Now you have a pass catcher for this side of the ball. You just miss out on Russell, so both ways you're missing out on that. So there's going to be a lot left over. So these salaries are priced up a little bit, and that's with Carson, who's a decently cheap option up there. And then you basically get into your kickers, and again, I don't really hate doing this in this situation. Yeah, you're going to leave $7,300 on the table, but how many guys in that tournament, I'm going to only play tournaments at least, don't do this for cash, or even cash, this isn't awful, but how many guys in that tournament are going to leave $7,300 on the table on this slate and not play Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers? I think very few. Do I think it's a viable play? I actually do think it's a viable play. Sometimes it's not a viable. Sometimes it's not the smartest play to do something like this in a vacuum. And Adam Levintan of the Fantasy Edge podcast, DFF Playbook, Fantasy Draftkings analyst, great guy. If you want to follow him on Twitter, he's literally great information. One of the many good guys on DFS information a week. He says in a vacuum, so basically in a vacuum, if I said you're going to start 2 kickers in a fantasy football lineup, it sounds awful. Especially even if I said in a captain lineup, it doesn't sound that great. But when I say you get to fit Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones, MVS, and Chris Carson in that lineup as well, in a game where it should be a run-heavy script, but Devontae Adams should also see double-digit targets, I don't hate it, right? And you're going to get both kickers who are averaging probably closer to 7 points each a week, 7, 5, 12, 17, 14. Yeah, so I mean, this guy's could get you 10 points, right? In a game where it could also be low scoring if they're going to run the ball a lot because there's just going to be less plays, right? Don't love Janikowski, so maybe you come off of him. But again, I like this lineup of just leaving it here where it is. Leave some money on the table in a tournament. I think that's a great strategy at leaving money on the tables in these tournament lineups because it's a way to get a lineup that other people don't. Nobody's going to want to leave this money on. Maybe some of you guys seeing this, but nobody's really going to want to leave this on there. I really don't feel too confident about this lineup the more I think about it, only because we have 2 pass catchers for the Packers in here, and if we're predicting a run-heavy script where there's going to be field goals, having 2 pass catchers hurts. But again, Aaron Rodgers could probably throw for 250 yards in this game. If Adams is getting 100, if Scantling's getting like 70, and one of them catches a touchdown, it's viable if the running backs do well. If you really don't feel comfortable with it, you can come up to Lockett. You can go to Doug Baldwin. We haven't looked at David Moore yet, but David Moore is also on here. You can go to David Moore. Right? These are all options that you could do. Another way to look at this would be Jimmy Graham here. Ditch that. If you want to go full Packers stack, you could do that and run it back with Carson at your captain spot. This would be saying that basically the Seahawks are blowing out the Packers, which I don't see them blowing out really any team this year. So I don't think I want to go full Packers stack. I do like Doug Baldwin. Doug Baldwin kills the Packers. I do love Doug Baldwin. I don't hate Tyler Lockett in this situation. And again, no matter which guy you start here, $5,700 left over. You go up to Tyler Lockett, $4,900 left over. I like Jimmy Graham when both those guys are out. I think these are the 3 Packers playmakers that you want in this game. Of course, Rodgers is going to be high owned in this situation. He's going to be a great play any week. But in this situation where it seems like both teams want to run the ball, the Packers just got right running the ball. I want these 3 guys. Maybe Aaron Jones is the play in the captain spot. You probably can't afford him. You probably can afford him, actually. Yeah, you can easily afford him. So Carson was at 5K. You could even do this lineup if you want. I just like having Carson in there. And again, if it ends up being Rashad Penny week, I'd lose all my money, at least in this lineup. Don't hate this lineup. I think, again, I do like Doug Baldwin more. If we were just to finally look at David Moore, as I've said his name multiple times now, David Moore's going to get low targets, but he's going to get the deep targets, right? He basically needs to catch a touchdown to be viable, and that's just the way it is. He caught 4, and then regression hit him. He hasn't caught 1 in 2 weeks. You could say he's due based on what he's been doing. I kind of want to stay away from him. And I do like Doug Baldwin this league. I don't know why. I don't know if it's just because of past success that I've had with Doug Baldwin. If there's a bias there, just looking at it on first look, I try and take those out after I digest it more. But again, this is just a first look. This is what you want to look at, though. Again, Russell Wilson's attempts. 26, 39, 17, 23, 24. On a short week, what do we think Wilson's going to do? And again, his rushing attempts have gone up the last 2 weeks, so that makes him a viable play. That's why he's getting in the 20-point range. 92 yards against the Rams. Had his best game of the year. So It's just where really you feel comfortable going with the slate. Do you think Wilson will get on the ground? If Wilson gets on the ground for 50 yards, he's the play, right? Because he's basically doing what the Chris Carson can do, and then he's going to throw for some yards. I like this lineup. It leaves $3,700 on the table. You can go Carson at captain. Don't think you can't go Adams at captain. You can go Graham at captain. I think Graham's a sneaky captain in a spot where a lot of people want to play running backs at captain, want to play maybe Devontae Adams at captain. I think Graham is a sneaky guy who can do. I had him at captain against San Francisco, and he can do something like this. He can get you over 25 points in your captain spot. If he catches 2 touchdowns, which he's viable to do any single week, even more. So I think I'm going to go Carson back here, just because I think Carson's the guy to get 2 touchdowns over somebody like Aaron Jones. The Packers throw a lot more in the red zone than Seattle does. So I think Carson, and he's a bigger body back, can get that goal line work better. I think he'll be in a situation to have inside the 5-yard carries more than Aaron Jones will be. So this is just one lineup build, right? This is the strategy of leaving money on the table, playing a kicker, even playing 2 kickers, getting some guys who will catch the ball, getting some guys who are going to get the work. And again, we don't know what Seattle's going to do if something happens closer to game time, and it seems like Carson won't be playing as much. It doesn't seem so far that's the way it's going to go. Basically, we're fading the quarterbacks in this type of a lineup. And again, I'm going to make multiple lineups, so I'm not going to completely fade them. And then we're fading MVS, who I think is very scary to fade, but I don't want 2 Packers pass catchers, and I'd rather have Adams if we could buy him. If you dare do something like this and then you leave literally $10K on the table, I think that's a little too much to leave on the table. But I think, again, on a Thursday night captain slate, I think this lineup's also viable, where MVS can go for 100 yards like he has been doing. He just doesn't have that same touchdown upside as somebody like Adams, who also has a 100-yard upside, who also is basically unguardable, and he doesn't have nearly a cornerback number 1 matchup this week as he has had in the past weeks with Xavier Howard. Absolutely fried him. Tre'Davious White absolutely fried him. Did pretty well against Stephon Gilmore, and if Rodgers would have seen him twice, he would have had over 100 yards against Gilmore. He's just been tearing up number 1 corners. I think this is going to be a good game overall. I think it's going to be fun. I only play these slates really just for fun, but if you hit one of these, then you basically pay off all your Thursday night slates for the next few years, right? If you hit it all the way up, you pay off a lot of things for the next few years, your student loans, right? So that's what we're going for tonight. If I don't win, I hope you guys win. This was a first look lineup basically for Thursday night. I'm going to try and get some, I don't like giving out picks, but just like guys that I feel good about, maybe some other guys that not a lot of people are looking at this week, out as well today, since I know I haven't put out anything in the past 2 days due to that family incident that I had to go to the funeral. It's honestly just awful. 2 young girls, a baby, I think like a 5-year-old, so it's very sad. I'm going to leave that in, again, the description for a GoFundMe, just really to leave them some money behind the kids. That's what it's all about. Have them, whether it's a school starting fund for like a school, or literally just basic needs to support support those kids, take the shoulders off some of the rest of the family members, so, and really just set them up for the future. So again, I'll leave that in the description below, and I appreciate it, guys. Again, if you could hit a like button if you're this far, and if you hadn't hit the like button, just hit that like button, because this is going to be a shorter video out there for a short amount of time. And if you hit that subscribe button, if you haven't already, I really appreciate that. We're getting closer to 500, right? And then the top goal of 1,000. I don't even thought behind 1,000. I've only thought about getting to 1,000 subscribers. But right now, 500's first, so if we can get there, that'd be great. My name's Sal, guys. Good luck tonight on this slate. This video is going to be out as soon as possible, hopefully by noon. Give you guys a decent amount of time to break it down, look through this video, check it with some of the things you guys are doing. But I appreciate it. Best of luck tonight. Peace. I'll see you next time.